Celebrating 49 years on the air, award-winning Farm Week is a production of Mississippi State University Extension.
Today on Farm Week, the Supreme Court says no to the president's tariffs, but will he have the last laugh? Plus, when it comes to manure, things could get a little fishy. We'll explain. In Southern Gardening, a different kind of story. Are you liking it? And an encore, go deep-sea diving with Farm Week at the Mississippi Aquarium. Farm Week starts right now.
Hello, everybody. I'm Zach Ashmore.
And I'm Mike Russell. Thanks for joining us again here on Farm Week. Regardless of how you feel about tariffs, the Supreme Court's recent ruling on the president's use of sweeping tariffs dealt him a blow, at least temporarily. David Miller takes a closer look and has our trade wrap. Here's David.
In a 6-3 decision Friday, the U.S. Supreme Court struck down President Trump's use of the Emergency Economic Powers Act of 1977. The High Court said the power of tariffs, the central plank of the president's economic plan, are given to Congress and is very clearly spelled out in the Constitution. The act is meant to be used only during national emergencies.
China.
In April, as part of Liberation Day, the president cited the drug flow from several countries, including major U.S. trading partners Canada, Mexico, and China, among the reasons for implementing the duties. The baseline duty of 10% was imposed last spring on nearly all imports to the U.S., with even higher rates on specific goods and countries. The dissenting opinion said that tariffs may or may not be wise policy, but as a matter of text, history, and precedent, they are clearly lawful. The president could still use other laws to impose tariffs if he chooses.
The Supreme Court's ruling on tariffs is deeply disappointing, and I'm ashamed of certain members of the court, absolutely ashamed, for not having the courage to do what's right for our country.
Before the ruling, USDA was conducting business as usual, holding its 102nd annual Agricultural Outlook Forum. While there were Q&A sessions focusing on the future of U.S. agriculture,
that really is an untapped set of countries with growing populations.
The most anticipated portion of the forum were the outlook numbers for stocks, acreage, and projected harvest. USDA number crunchers are predicting wheat acres to drop by 300,000 to 45 million as U.S. growers shift over to corn and soybeans. Corn acres were cut from last year's 98.8 million to 94 million. Projections for planted soybean acres moved higher from last season's 81.2 million to this year's 85 million. Overall, USDA expects 224 million acres to be planted in these three crops, down nearly a million from last year.
Needless to say, President Trump's ire for his Supreme Court opposition was evident during his State of the Union address on Tuesday. He described the tariff ruling as, quote, very unfortunate and disappointing. Trump said he believes his use of tariffs will, quote, replace the modern-day system of income tax.
So, tariffs and trade certainly under the congressional microscope. Meanwhile, the USMCA, created by the president in 2018, is under intense review for renewal. Peter Tubbs looks at how this agreement with our top two trading partners is being assessed before that renewal deadline.
MCA. The export markets between Canada, Mexico, and the United States are highly integrated, which makes for really efficient flow of goods, which ultimately saves money to the end consumer.
This week, the Agricultural Coalition for USMCA began a campaign to encourage the renewal of the USMCA trade agreement in its current form.
If we remove that framework that offers those things, then we'd be talking about an environment with greater instability, and we're already in a challenging farm economy.
The 2018 agreement between the United States, Mexico, and Canada, known as the USMCA, is up for a mandatory review and renewal by January of 2026. Renewal would extend the trade pact for another 16 years. The coalition was launched on February 5th, and this week began its marketing campaign on the benefits of the USMCA for American agriculture. The over 40 farm commodity and industry trade groups that form the coalition argue that while the agreement has areas that need to be revisited, the successes of the USMCA justify its extension.
While the agreement is due for a few targeted improvements, overall, it is critical to the farm economy, and it is certainly helpful to rural America, particularly during tough economic times like we are in right now.
Bloomberg has reported that President Trump has discussed withdrawing from the USMCA. A failure to renew the trade deal by the three member countries would trigger annual negotiation cycles for the next 20 years. If the trade treaty passes muster, it will be renewed for 16 more years.
Quick note, the USMCA renewal deadline is actually coming up in July. Between now and then, U.S. farm groups will lobby heavily for that renewal to secure $149 billion in annual trade. Even so, there's a definite potential for major revisions rather than a simple extension.
An agricultural firm in Colorado has taken a straightforward approach to helping feed people who live in a food desert. They grow food themselves, but as Lindsay Grewer reports, they have a secret weapon that just might surprise you.
Most of us don't think twice about shopping for fruits and veggies. But for many families on the southeast side, this can be easier said than done.
We have 2 grocery stores that serve 80,000 residents, and that is one of the characteristics that defines a food desert.
All of this was developed to be an oasis in this desert.
We're going to be able to produce year-round green vegetables and at least 400 to 500 heads of lettuce per week to our community.
All of that produce will be grown right here inside this greenhouse. And every week, items ready for harvest will be boxed up and distributed to food pantries, low-cost food centers, and even local grocers.
I feel like it's really important for families who are struggling financially, which is really common, to have options, to have really nutritious and organic food.
And the magic ingredient in all of this? Fish poop.
That's right. What makes this more than just an ordinary greenhouse are the roughly 400 fish and their waste, allowing all of this produce to grow.
Fish waste actually produces ammonia, okay? So when they go to the bathroom, and then after they do, it gets sucked up into here and it settles out, goes into that first filter over there.
This one here?
Yeah. And then from there, it comes into our final filter, and that bacteria is converting the ammonia into nitrate for the plants, and all that nutrient-rich water gets fed to the lettuce.
So all of that growing over there is thanks to fish.
Yes.
That is amazing. People at today's grand opening told me that this creative solution to a problem represents what the southeast side of Colorado Springs is all about.
We have a passionate, caring community, and we all band together to help our community.
And of course, they all had praise for those little workers behind it all.
I'm really proud of the tilapia. You know, they're doing their job really well, and they're the best coworkers I could ever ask for.
On the lighter side, misconceptions about something we see a lot of here in Mississippi, lichen. Turns out it may not be the problem that some actually think it is. Here's Eddie Smith with an insider explanation.
Throughout the year, I get calls about gray fuzzy stuff growing on plants and killing them. The culprit that causes concern is lichen. A common misconception is that lichens are parasites feeding on landscape plants. However, they are a symbiotic relationship between a fungus and an algae. This partnership allows them to survive in some of the harshest environments on Earth. They come in a variety of shapes, sizes, and colors, and can be found growing on the bark of trees and shrubs, but can also be found growing on rocks. Lichens are unique and fascinating organisms and can generally be classified into three main types based on their growth forms. Crustose lichens form a thin, crust-like layer that is tightly attached to the bark or surface. They are commonly found on rocks and trees and can be difficult to distinguish from the surface they grow on. Foliose lichens have a leafy appearance with flat lobes that are loosely attached to the bark or surface. They are commonly found on trees and rocks. Fruticose lichens have a shrub-like or branching appearance with upright or hanging structures. They are commonly found on trees, rocks, and soil. Despite their small size, lichens play an important role in the ecosystem and do not harm plants. Overall, lichens are a fascinating example of the complex relationships that exist in the natural world. I'm Eddie Smith, and I look forward to seeing you next time on Southern Gardening.
We'll take a break right here, but stick around. Coming up, another extraordinary encore episode of Extension Matters. It's a breathtaking view above ground of an amazing underwater partnership between MSU Extension and the Mississippi Aquarium, a spectacular showcase of the extreme wonders of the Gulf Coast. Visitors get up close and personal with creatures of the deep, the aquarium sparking their interest and curiosity. Diving deep, coming up on Farm Week. Don't go away.
I believe in people and their hopes, their aspirations and their faith, and their right to make their own plans and arrive at their own decisions, and their ability and power to enlarge their lives and plan for the happiness of those they love. I believe that education, of which extension work is an essential part, is basic in stimulating individual initiative, self-determination, and leadership. That these are the keys to democracy, and that people, when given facts they understand, will act not only in their self-interest, but also in the interest of society. Because I believe these things, I am an extension professional.
I believe in people and their hopes, their aspirations, and their faith. I believe in intellectual freedom to search for and present the truth without bias and with courteous tolerance toward the views of others. I believe that education is a lifelong process, and the greatest university is the home. That my success as a teacher is proportional to those qualities of mind and spirit that give me welcome entrance to the homes of the families I serve. Because I believe these things, I am an extension professional.
Time for the market report. Grains is seeing a big rally,
especially in wheat. We'll get into why that is. But first, the numbers. What were the week's biggest gains and losses? And then several USDA reports updating us on how livestock slaughter is going so far this year. And finally, grain prices surging. We look into the reasons why. So, markets closed, still trending up with row crop split. Let's take a look. The week's biggest gain, wheat up 33 cents, a 6% increase from the previous week. The week's biggest loss, lumber, down over $22. That's more than a 3.5% decrease from the previous week. So, several USDA reports dropped recently. These are important to update us on how things look on a national scale. We dive into livestock this week, starting with the broiler hatchery report, moving on to poultry slaughter, then this month's cattle on feed, followed by the milk production report. In the broiler hatchery report, broiler type eggs up 2% compared to last year. That comes out to be 254 million eggs. Of those, Mississippi placed 18 million. Average hatchability, 79%. Chicks placed, which is delivery from a hatchery to a poultry barn brooding area, also up 2% compared to last year. That comes out to be 196 million chicks. Of those, Mississippi placed about 14.5 million. In the poultry slaughter report, poultry certified wholesome during January this year about 4.5 billion pounds, down 3% from last year. Preliminary total live weight of inspected poultry, nearly 6 billion pounds, also down 3% from last year. Mature chickens down 4% altogether. Young chickens slaughtered averaged over 6.5 pounds per bird, up slightly from last year. Average live weight of chickens also up by 2%. In the cattle on feed report, cattle and calves on feed for the slaughter market totaled 11.5 million head, 2% lower than last year. Placements in feedlots totaled 1.75 million head, 5% down from last year. Marketings of fed cattle over 1.5 million head, 13% lower than last year. In the milk production report, last month's production about 19 billion pounds, up over 3% compared to last year. Production per cow also up by 24 pounds per cow, and number of milk cows compared to last year up by 200,000 head. Annual production of milk for 2025, 232 billion pounds, up over 2.5%. Continuing on livestock, Dr. Josh Maples, Extension Ag economist, recently gave his thoughts on how cattle prices are shaping up so far this year. Early we know, but it seems things are going well. He said, quote, "Cattle prices have pushed higher during the first few months of 2026. 5-weight steer average prices in Mississippi, Arkansas, and Kentucky all topped $450 per hundredweight last week. The weekly 5-market average for fed steers was $246.91. These are each record high prices and sharply above year-ago levels. Cull cow and bull prices are also at or near record highs." Moving into our report, as you saw in our market update, grain prices on the rise. What's the cause of this current rally? Geopolitical instability, specifically with Iran and the continuing Ukraine war. Analyst Sean Hackett also gives us a heads up on what weather looks like this year.
Throughout history, wheat has always been most sensitive to geopolitical instability. And this whole situation with Iran, are they going to close the Strait of Hormuz? And we're continuing to get conflicting signals with Russia, Ukraine. Pieces, they're just not moving in the right direction for peace. And I think we are starting to put geopolitical, the way I'm looking at it, we have really, really good weather in Brazil for the second crop corn, not exciting the market. We have an aggressive cash market selling domestically for farmers needing to raise capital, as they typically do in mid-late February. And even though geopolitics are exciting for wheat, it's not really the same story for corn, and so it's just the odd man left out. It doesn't have a good story yet to drive it like soybeans do and like wheat does. And this is the time of the year where we're trying to calibrate what kind of total production is Argentina and second crop corn going to deliver. Right now, the weather's been pretty darn good, not a lot of heat, decent moisture. It looks like the crops are going to be on the higher side, and it's just not going to give the corn market a reason to outperform either wheat or soybeans at this point. We're at the weather point for spring, and that means the weather point for winter wheat. And we've been dealing with a lot of cold weather, which we think is going to continue to be a theme of some flash frost risks for U.S. winter wheat here during the spring. If I'm looking for a weather catalyst, I think winter wheat's the one that could continue to provide that type of story. The IRI comes out every month, and they tell you what they believe their probabilities are for El Nino, La Nina. Right now, La Nina has just ended, and we're moving towards an El Nino later in the year. The projections based on statistical and dynamical models, there's a 60% chance we're going to have El Nino by July. That usually means cooler weather and timely rains like we saw in 2023. That would mean good crops. price momentum going into the spring needs to be taken full advantage of given El Nino expected weather pattern. I think you're going to have to take that shot before the growing season because of that.
And that's it for a deeper look into the markets. Seems a lot of factors moving the needle these days. We'll see how that continues. Mike?
Thank you, Zach. We tend to think of agriculture as happening on land, but needless to say, what happens in water is part of that picture too. In our feature from producer Brian Utley, the encore story of a special partnership on the Mississippi coast that showcases just how much extension matters.
I've heard coastal Mississippi referred to as the secret coast, and I think that's very apropos. I think a lot of folks in Mississippi just haven't had a chance to think about the extreme wonders of the Gulf Coast as it pertains to Mississippi. But fortunately, we have a place like Mississippi Aquarium where people can come and really get a fantastic introduction.
The aquarium really was designed to showcase what we have right here in Mississippi. And being an indoor and outdoor facility, it really gives us the opportunity to showcase a wide variety of species. We like to focus on what's local, so whether it's freshwater fish that are found here in Mississippi that are highlighted in our freshwater river, or some of the saltwater species that you can see behind us. You know, we have a touch tank where the kids can get up close and personal and touch some of the creatures and some of the rays and sharks and anemones and urchins. You know, it's really fun to watch the kids do that, and to be able to showcase what we have behind us is really something special for the people on the coast and throughout the state.
It's been a very fast and tight relationship between Mississippi State University Extension and Mississippi Aquarium from day one. They reached out and wanted to know the types of things that we were doing on the coast, and they were immediately supportive of the types of work we were doing. Specifically, most of my work focuses on sharks and rays. So they reached out relatively early and was eager to support some of our shark tracking studies. And just during multiple conversations we had, it occurred to us collectively that there was a space that we could help fill. And that is just providing a simple, easy to understand, very clean guide to the sharks and rays that are not only here at the aquarium, but also off our coast of Mississippi.
It's really a great resource tool that, one, we pass it out to our staff to be more familiar with localized shark species, but we use it in our field trips, we use it in our outreach programs, we use it in our homeschool days when the homeschoolers come on campus to do field trips. It's kind of a curiosity thing, right? Because you want to see the differences of sharks, you want to see sizes, you want to see how they compare to the size of a human, or whatever it is that sparks the interest of people. It's just another nugget of an educational tool that we're able to share with people.
There are a lot of people that might say, well, I assume there's 1 or 2 or 3 species of sharks off our coast here, but it turns out there's a rich diversity of sharks and rays. We have a shark monitoring program that we've been operating for over 15 years now. So it's safe to say there's between 40 and 50 species of sharks right here in the north central Gulf of Mexico. I mean, and I think it's noteworthy to point out that some of these species we're just now learning about.
It gives a chance for kids and adults alike to really see what those species are, because we have a wide variety of species, and those are the ones that you normally don't see, right? Here's a chance where you can see what it looks like, you can actually touch it, and then we can actually educate you about it. So it is a tool that we find extremely helpful. It's very well done, and actually I think everybody's pretty proud of the outcome.
You know, when I think about, the design of the aquarium, their actual logo with those 3 sails and the 3 pillars that they stand for, education, conservation, community, you could almost substitute extension for Mississippi Aquarium, because you think of the tenets of extension, they're very, very similar. Education, conservation, community. So it's really just, it's a very natural fit, it's a very easy fit, and I think that's why this partnership has flourished so early, and that's why I see us having this relationship, for the life of both of these institutes.
Extension has been a great resource to us because it really does put the collaborative process together with like-minded individuals, like-minded thinking, and we're all about forward thinking, and we want to make our coast better. And the way you do that is to go out and figure out what's happening on the coast and how can we influence either change by behavior or change in environments, make policy changes, but coming together is the only way to do that, by working together with people that really think like you, and Extension offers that to us.
Beautiful, absolutely breathtaking.
Fantastic videography by producer Brian Utley and his team.
Very much so. Well, next time on Farm Week, we take another look back at the logging industry, this time through the eyes of the Flora brothers.
It's a story we first aired in 2016. Jason and Jeremy Flora from Maben, Mississippi. Brothers in life and business. The 2016 Outstanding Loggers of the Year.
How did they get started, and how did their way of doing business result in a big win? The answer next time on Farm Week.
Remember, if you missed a story, look for past episodes of Farm Week on our website at farmweek.tv.
And don't forget to follow us on Facebook and YouTube. See you next week. Thanks for watching.